Imagine that you're queuing for a pair of trainers that you really want. So you go to the shop, you get in the queue, and so far you've been queuing for about 3 hours and you're around 25% of the way into the queue. Then all of a sudden you get a text from your mate, and your mate says to you, well, look at this, like this other shop, they've got the trainers as well, but the queue is only around 5 hours long. You spend a few minutes thinking about it, but your conclusion is that because you've already been in this queue for 3 hours, and you don't want those 3 hours to have been for nothing, you're going to stay where you are. The thing is, with some basic maths, you can easily work out that you've been in the queue for 3 hours, and you're 25% of the way in, so the rest of the queue is going to take about 9 hours. It'll take you 9 hours to get to the front and get the trainers that you want. They probably won't even be in stock then, by the way, but that's a matter for another day. Whereas if you go to the other shop with the 5 hour queue, clearly, you'll go there and you'll get to the front quicker. Despite this, most of us will stay in the original queue.
That's the sunk cost fallacy.
In a nutshell, the sunk cost fallacy is when our vision or our decision making becomes clouded by the time, the care, or the money that we've already invested into something. Because we're struggling to accept the loss that we've already made, the loss that has already happened, rather than doing so, we continue to invest more and more and more into it. And rather than making our decisions based on the probability or the likelihood of success, instead, what we're doing is making our decisions on the depth and wealth of our prior investment. And another problem is that the longer this goes on, the bigger amount of money or time or care that we've sunk into this endeavour, therefore the harder it becomes to give up. It's just a constantly enduring cycle, very problematic. You can see examples of sunk cost fallacy everywhere you look in life. So one might be staying on a career path because you're 10 years in and you don't want to lose the progress you've made, even though it's destroying your soul. You could be watching a television series and you get 6 episodes through it, 7 episodes through it, out of about 10. But even though it's terrible, you don't quit because you've done 7 episodes and you'll feel like you've wasted all of that time if you stop before the end. So you soldier on all the way to the terrible finale.
The show goes on!
For gamers, you might think about playing a game and 100%ing it, which I've never done, I don't think. Can't think of any game that I've 100%ed. But yeah, you're 60% in, for example, and it's awful. Again, it's just a really bad game. The side quests are terribly boring, but you always 100% games, man. One of the most obvious examples of sunk cost fallacy, of course, is gambling, where someone goes to a casino, they throw some money down, and they lose. But they don't want to accept that they've lost. They don't want to accept that lost money as reality. So they chuck a bit more down, and then a bit more, and then a bit more, forever in the hopes that they might win back what they've lost, instead of just accepting what they've lost, accepting the likelihood that they might lose more, and moving on.
I think I want my money back.
Another example is a relationship that you've been in for a long time, but you don't want to accept the reality that you've come to the conclusion that this person and yourself are not actually the right match. So you stay together and you're together for 40 odd years and unhappily married with 2 kids who end up completely traumatized because the 2 of you can't get on. Well, that's a horror show, isn't it? It also might be useful for me to give some examples from my own life where I've managed to avoid sunk cost. In some cases, not necessarily because I was being clever, but just because I tend to quit things quite easily. So I've recently been reading Ted Chiang's Stories of Your Life and Others, which notably led to the movie production Arrival. I got about 210 pages into the book, and you know what? I haven't been enjoying it that much, and I think there are about 90 pages left. But sunk cost fallacy, there's no point finishing it when I'm not enjoying it, because those 90 pages will take another hour or so. So I just dashed it to the side.
Be gone!
I can give you an example of the television series one for myself. So me and my girlfriend were watching Marvel's The Iron Fist, which, man, you know what? I really wanted those Marvel series to push on, because the first season of Daredevil was really great. Luke Cage was pretty decent. Jessica Jones, the first season was pretty decent, but they just slowly fell off a cliff. And The Iron Fist was just terrible. But we got 8 episodes in, I think. We were 2 episodes from the end. And one night, me and my girlfriend sat down to sort of watch something with dinner. And I think we just looked at each other and kind of went, should we carry on watching this? And ultimately decided, no, this is a waste of our life and it can't get any better. I think that avoiding sunk cost is particularly important on any creative journey. You have to be ready to just strip your work down, to throw articles out the window, to throw drawings in the bin, to completely bin off videos, like fully filmed and edited videos, if you don't think they're good enough and you still have more work to do on them. It's just not worth the extra time. Start again and make something that you're proud of. In all of the examples that I've now listed, if you think about it, it becomes obvious that quitting is the rational decision to make. There's an interesting story about Daniel Kahneman, who is a psychologist and writer of the book that kind of focuses on decision making called Thinking Fast and Slow. Jason Zweig, who is a Wall Street Journal columnist, was working on the book with Daniel Kahneman. And he said that what was most interesting, or one of the things that was most interesting in this process, was Daniel's ability to just fully work on a chapter for a long time, get it looking pretty much done, and then just blow it up, just detonate it, completely get rid of everything and start again. Zweig also says that right after Kahneman had detonated a chapter completely, he sends a version so utterly transformed that is unrecognizable. It begins differently, it ends differently, it incorporates anecdotes and evidence you never would have thought of, it draws on research that you've never heard of. Out of nowhere, he's just completely started again and thrown everything out. So we decided to confront Daniel to ask him how on earth he can even consider doing a thing. Saying, when I asked Danny how he could start again as if we'd never written an earlier draft, he said the words I've never forgotten. I have no sunk cost. When talking about the sunk cost fallacy and waxing lyrical about the importance of avoiding it, it's also important to caveat it with a bit of balance, because you don't want to quit too early. You don't want to stop a project before it gains any traction, because that's very easily done. It can take years for a project to take off, and compounding, which I'll probably talk about in another video, is vital to that process. You know, just sticking at something and it's slowly developing into something huge, which takes a long time. But at the same time, you know, you might be better served working on a different project. It's very difficult to know, and you have to be very careful in your assessment of what you should do next. One thing that's useful to do is to just try and be as honest as possible with yourself about whether something is worth continuing or not. You have to be pretty brutal and try and avoid being emotional about the decision, and make the decision calmly and passively. Maybe even include someone else in that process who isn't as involved as you. Farnham Street, whose expertise I would definitely defer to in this particular area, emphasised that the key to avoiding the sunk cost fallacy is to look to the future, saying rational decision making requires you to forget about the costs incurred to date. No matter how much you've already invested, only your assessment of the future costs and benefits counts. Now I'm going to leave you with a great comment that I found on another YouTube video about sunk cost. Don't cling to a mistake just because you spent a lot of time making it. Thanks for watching then. I'll probably try and make a few more videos about decision making going forward. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see them, like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.